Hello, everyone. I hope all is well with you guys. Welcome to River of Healing. Today is more of a sit down, chit chat type of conversation. I was going to talk a little bit about how I came to know Christ and sharing my journey of coming to know Christ. Um, you would also discover that it also led to my arrival in the United States. I've been here for the past 17 years. And from the title of this video, you're probably wondering, when was she ever an atheist? So, my journey goes all the way back to, right now I'm 31 years old. So, I'll say at the age of maybe about a year and some change, maybe 2 years old, originally born and raised in Ghana. My parents moved to a country called Swaziland, which is located in Southern Africa and is also now known as the Kingdom of Eswatini, I believe. And so I was in Swaziland for about 12 years. A little bit about my childhood, I think, I won't say I think, but I was raised in a Christian home. And we, went to church every Sunday, had Friday cell group meetings, um, Thursday prayer meetings. Sometimes on Saturdays we had youth. It was just your typical, you know, Christian upbringing for those of you who are, originate from Africa. Like on weekends, especially especially on Saturdays and Sundays, we had to wake up at like 6:30, 6 o'clock to get up and pray. It was just always, you know, things of God. However, even though I grew up in this environment, I honestly did not believe that God existed. And so I was just going through the motions. It was like a ritual. You get up, you're forced to pray. But I never really had a personal relationship with God, and I didn't believe that He existed. And there were a lot of things that actually led to my unbelief in God's existence. One of them had to do with my childhood. I grew up in a very abusive home. Okay. My father, I love my dad, but he wasn't the best of an example. And because of him, he had a really bad temper, and sometimes his anger will lead him to get physical with my mother. And I witnessed this growing up as a child, and there were so many times where I would say, I don't even think I wanted even to get married because of that, because I was just like, no. And there was a phrase I used to tell myself, which is no man, no trouble. And so as a little girl, that was something I used to tell myself, no man, no trouble. And I don't know why, but I just began to equate trouble to men. And so my desire growing up was that I'm just going to be single for the rest of my life, get a great job, have my own place, and will not be bothered with men. And so that was just how I grew up. And aside from that, hearing all these things about Jesus, to me, I was just like, okay, if you're talking about Christ and your life doesn't really exemplify this Christ or God you're referring to, I don't want anything to do with him. And I used to often wonder, like, okay, this is the stuff that's going on in my house. I wonder what other people are doing in their houses. And then we come together on Sundays or Fridays or whatever day of the week, and we all put on this facade or put on this mask and pretend to be something or someone that we're not. And so that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to have anything to do with God and didn't believe he existed, because I was just like, this has to be just fake. Another thing that made me consider that, God didn't exist was the fact that I saw all the turmoil and the chaos that was going on around the world. And I was just like, people are suffering, people are going through stuff. If there really is a God, why are people suffering? If there really is a God, and people claim that he has all this power. Why can't he just stop and let the pain go away? Why can't he let the suffering go away? Why does the world have to go through, what it's going through? And so for the longest, I wasn't someone who prayed. The only time I prayed was when we came together as a family over like a meal. Obviously, someone would pray when we go to church or something, but I never really talked to God because I didn't believe that he even existed. And so fast forward to about the age of maybe 13, almost 14 years old. I just got to a place in my life where I just was like, I've had enough of just my home, my environment in the house. I was a child that was troubled. People probably looked at me when I was a child and thought I was just a shy girl who kept to myself, but really inwardly I was troubled. I was going through a lot that I really couldn't talk to people about. I had my own insecurities. I always felt like I was never good enough. I was never pretty enough. I just had so many other things that I was dealing with aside from, my upbringing, my environment. And so there came a point in time where I finally, decided that, what, I'm going to take God up on this offer. Like, if you're really God, then you're going to have to prove yourself to me. And so at that time, we're living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I was sharing a bedroom with my sister and my brother. And so I would wait for them to go to bed at night, and I would just kind of sort of just get up. And my father used to buy us devotionals every year. We had a devotional, which I never used. It was just sitting there catching dust. And so eventually this one year, I believe it was 2003, I began to, read. I said, you know what? I'm going to start reading my Bible. I'm going to start praying. And so every single night I would go to God and I would say, if you're real, if you're God and you're real, I'm asking you to do these 2 things for me. And so I asked for 2 things. I said, God, I want you to, 1, bring about a change in my environment. And 2, I want you to change my location, because I no longer want to be in this house. I no longer want to be in this country. I just want to go somewhere. And so I asked God for 2 things: to change my environment. I no longer wanted to be where I was. And also, secondly, I wanted a change in my family because I was tired of the dysfunction. I was tired of all the chaos and the commotion that was going on. I just wanted peace. And so fast forward maybe a couple of months, maybe a little over 6 months later, my dad, he was involved in what they call a Full Gospel Businessmen Fellowship. Those of you who are aware of Full Gospel, it's just a bunch of men who come together. They pray together, they study the Word, they have like conferences and breakfast meetings. And so, one time, I guess one pastor was invited. He was a prophet. He was invited to one of their Full Gospel business meetings, I believe, and that's how my dad came across him. And my dad just was, I guess, enamored by him, and he was like, okay, cool, he's going to invite him to our church. And so he invited him to our church, and we at that time were going through a transition as a church, trying to figure out who our next pastor was going to be, because I think our old pastor was in the process of leaving or something to that effect. I don't really remember too much of what's going on because I was young at that time. But we had an all-night meeting. And those of you who don't know what an all-night meeting is, basically when, like, it's a Christian thing. You come together. So you can meet at the church at 9 or 10 o'clock p.m. and you literally pray all night long. And when I came to America, I realized that when people have all night meetings, like they kind of leave like around midnight or after midnight. Back in Africa, when they say all night, it's all night, honey. Like, we don't leave the church till like 7 a.m., 8 a.m. in the morning. So you are literally praying all night until you see light outside. And so this was one of those things. So we had an all night meeting, and all of a sudden, this man was a prophet. And I was kind of privy to this because, I mean, it wasn't new to me. I've heard of prophets. I've had encounters with them, but I never had anybody, call me by my name or tell me anything about my future. And basically, there's a difference between prophets and psychics. So let me break that down while we're in this video. Prophets are basically people who have the ability to hear from God. And then prophets are not always coming to tell you wonderful things about your future. Prophets are telling you the heart of God. And so whatever God tells them, that's what they're going to tell you. Sometimes they will say things to you that people will consider to be, they will call them prophets of doom. But literally, if God is speaking to a prophet to warn you about something, it's up to you to decide to listen. If he's telling you something great is about to happen, it's up to you to also take heed and make sure that you position yourself and align yourself so that you are able to receive what God has for you. Now, as psychics are people who basically consult dead spirits, and that is demonic. Now, some of the things that they may tell you is accurate, but it's not about the accuracy, but it's about the source. That's the difference. It's not about the accuracy, but the source. Because some people, can tell you about your future. They'll tell you the color of your underwear. They'll tell you your street, your address, where you live, the color of your house, all these things. But it's about the source. Some people have the ability to, are influenced by demons, are influenced by the devil, and they can still tell you things, but you have to be careful with the source. Because not everybody who tells you anything about you is from God. And so that's just a little info for those who are not aware about the difference between prophets and psychics, because there's a difference. And we can go into this at another time, but this is just like a brief overview of it. And so basically, back to the story. This prophet comes to our church, and obviously he is telling everybody, he's not prophesying to every single person. He's basically led by God. And so I had never experienced it before, even though I have witnessed it, meaning that I have seen prophets tell certain people, some of the people that we were growing up with, there were prophets who would tell them, like, you're going to be great, you're going to be this, you're going to be that. And those things did come to pass years later. But in this particular instance, the prophet, he just called me up to the front, and he basically told me, he said, you're praying about something, and God is saying that he has already done it. All you have to do is have faith. And so as soon as he said that, I literally broke down in tears, because for the first time in my life, God was real. The first time in my life, I realized that, wow, like, this God that we are serving, or this God that everybody's talking about, is real. Like, he actually hears me, because that was the first time I had gone to him and asked for something, and even tested him and tried him out, because I really was saying that if you're God, this is what I need you to do for me. And so when he said, all you have to do is have faith, because he's already done it, I was like, okay. So I remember, like, after the service, when we got home, my mom was like, what were you praying about? I was like, nothing. Like, mind your business. Okay, mind yours. I didn't say it that way, but that's really what I was trying to say. Because it was really between me and God. It was a God thing. And I really didn't want anybody to know about what I was praying about until it happened. And so my parents at that time were planning on sending me to Ghana. That's where we're originally from. I was supposed to go there for boarding school. And basically, my grandmother, the story behind the scenes was, my grandmother called my aunt and uncle who are here in America and told them that, your sister and your brother, in law, are trying to send their daughter here to boarding school. And she basically was telling them that you left Ghana because life in Southern Africa was much better than here. So to take her back, or to bring her back to Ghana would be just kind of going backwards. You want to take her to a place that's better than where you are now. And so eventually, my uncle, who I have lived with since I came to America, basically, called my parents and said, hey, this is what mom said you guys are planning on doing. And, we're going to bring her to America. And so that is the story of how I came to America. And that's the story of how I came to believe that God was real. And I wouldn't say that that was when I gave my life to Christ. I didn't give my life to Christ then. I didn't give my life to Christ. I came to America in 2004, August 22nd is when I arrived, to be exact. And I did not give my life to Christ until 2019. It was sometime in the month of August, September. And so it took me years to finally like completely surrender my life to Christ. And so I knew of him, I was building a relationship with him, but I didn't totally surrender. And what does totally surrender looks like? Totally surrender looks like you coming to a place in life where you're like, God, I give you my heart. I give you my mind. I give you my soul. I'm allowing you to take ownership, rulership, lordship over my entire life. And I am, basically come and take a seat and literally have your way. And so, even though I came to know about the knowledge of God, I was still not fully committed. And there were so many things that happened during my arrival that actually led to my final surrender to Christ. And that's a story for another day. And so, before I end this video, I'm sure there's someone out there who has the same thought, who is at a place where they're like, life is hard, everything is going bad. And so they're questioning the existence of God. They're trying to figure out, like, is God really real? And does he even hear me? Does he even exist? And just like me, I finally got to a place where I said, you know what? I'm going to test you. And so I began to pray and I asked for those two things. And yes, there were so many things that transpired, but a change has come to my family, a big change, a big transformation. And we're still in the process of seeing God move. And another thing that happened, obviously, was the change in location, the change in my environment. And God did come through. And so if you're out there and you are questioning if God exists, I pray that my life and my testimony encourages you to have faith that God truly exists. The Bible says that Christ, Jesus, is the way, the truth, and the life. No man can come to the Father except through him. You can try all other gods, but I can promise you that Jesus is the way. And if you try him, I promise you will not be disappointed. Whatever you're in, wherever you are, remember that life is not happening against you. Life is not happening to you. It's happening for you. Every circumstance, every place we find ourselves serves a purpose. And so wherever you are, believe this: God can turn your pain into purpose. He has a great plan for your life. He's not trying to hurt you. His intention is to reveal himself to you. And I pray that you come to know the saving power, the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, and that you're able to walk in the fullness of your purpose as you begin to know him. Stay blessed, and I will be talking to you guys soon. So take care.